Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Today is Thursday, May 31st, 2018, and I am just coming to share a new dream which the Lord shared with me, as well as, you know, something I think that the Lord wants me to just share with those who are a little bit lost or confused in my journey, I guess. There's people who are surrounded by me in my own life, and the Lord gave me, some revelation on um, this week through a dream, and He was just showing me that a lot of people are confused, to my walk with God. So I think the purpose of Him showing me this is to just be honest and to just share, a little bit in my life, a little bit more. And just so those who may question, or those who don't understand the walk with God, or don't understand what is available to us through God, what is truly available to us. There's so much that's available to us in God, and we are blind to it. It's not that we don't reject, or it's not that we reject it, but we are blind to the provisions that God has made day to day with us, in our walk. So He gave me, some revelation in that through a dream, which I won't share that part of the dream. However, I will share the next half, because this dream, it had four scenes, four separate scenes. The first two scenes was God showing me, like what I was saying, some things in my life and people in my life that are surrounded by me, important people. And, He was just showing me that they're a little bit confused and they don't understand my process and what I'm going through, So I won't share the dream itself, but I will just try to explain a little bit in the walk of God and what is available to us, and different ways how God um, works to us and desires to walk with us and desires to have a relationship with us. And I've said it before, and most of the time, unfortunately for us, the way that we draw closer to Him is through pain. This is the best way to explain it, or the best way that God can work in our lives and have a relationship, and we be obedient, we listen to Him. Unfortunately, it's not through the best circumstances and the best moments, the best situations, but oftentimes it's through the most difficult, the most negative, the ones that we would least expect to see God and find God. These are the ones in which He closest draw to us. He walks with us. He wants to work to us. He wants to speak to us and teach us of Himself. So I think the purpose of Him showing me that was to just explain all of this. So let me explain the dream first. Like I said, I won't share half, but I'll share the next half. But this dream was actually a revelation, and the confirmation which He gave to me regarding it was incredible. And the dream itself spoke of a disaster to come. Now, I saw before where God was showing a lot of different people disasters, or not disasters, or tsunamis that would be coming, and many people over different countries, over, different periods, have shared on this. And I never saw this before. I always heard people speak about receiving, God showing them about a massive tsunami coming. But I never, I've never received anything until this week. And the Lord showed me this, and in the dream I said, it is about to begin. Everything that I've been sharing is about to begin. And anyways, I'll just share the dream, and then I'll explain, like I was saying, the next part. But in this dream, the first thing that I noticed was I was in a major city. It seemed like a city like New York with these high-rise buildings, and I was in the middle of these apartment blocks, I guess you'd call them, um, or like housing scheme. I think that's the best way. Like, I'm not from the US, so I don't really know what you'd call them, but I think it's like the big housing schemes in New York. You'd have that sort of area, like real tall buildings where people live in, like apartments, real tall apartment blocks. So I was like on the street like these, and I looked at one of the buildings and I started to see water coming through the cracks of the building, so the doors, the windows, between the alleys, in between the different apartments, there was water starting to gush through. And I looked at it strange. I was like, that's weird, I remember thinking that's weird. And then more started to come. And I had the knowing in my thought that this is a tsunami is coming. So I began to run. I turned around and I started to run, and I tried to get to higher ground. So I started to climb one of these apartment buildings. And as I was climbing, or no, before I started climbing, sorry, I looked up. And when I knew that there was a tsunami coming, I looked up in the sky and I saw this massive tsunami. It was like hundreds of feet tall, way taller than the building. And it was so tall, I remember seeing the sun in the background. It was so tall that it kind of blocked out the sun. This is how tall it was, that it kind of shaded the sun and it continued rolling. So then there was chaos. There was tons of people started to run. And I started to run then, and then I started to climb one of these apartment buildings. And while I was climbing it, I saw the wave approaching, and you could even see the spray, the mist that was coming off of the waves. And it came and everyone braced for it, and it hit us. But when it hit us, it did the strangest thing. It rolled past, and I saw again the spray coming off of it, and everyone was wet. So I saw the wetness off of everyone. And as we were being wet, it rolled past. So like the wetness was dripping off of everyone, and everyone kind of looked around at each other like, what happened? Like, that was so strange. That just came in and left, It was just one wave. It came hard and then it left. And then everyone started to come into the streets, and everything was like really silent. And as I crossed the street, I saw, this was the strangest thing. But again, it confirmed another dream which God was showing me, which I spoke on in my last video, where the veil is being thin. The veil between the spiritual and the physical is so thin. And anyways, I'll explain more on that later. But when I crossed the road, I saw there was a car driving past, and this car had color. Like, everything was in color. It was like I was looking at a movie screen. So everything was in color, and as the car rolled by, I noticed that it was like a peeling away of a film. So as the film peeled away, I could see the color going from, or everything in the scene going from color to black and white, right? So it reminded me of the movie. I'm not sure if you have seen, or if anyone has seen the movie Pleasantville, where in that movie, there was everything in there's this like, this country or this world where everything is black and white, and then this girl goes into it and disrupts everything, and there's color added to everything, right? So slowly everyone starts to become color. Well, it was like that. However, it was the reverse effect, where our world and everything, the way that we see it in color, will be peeled away, and it was made like bare, and everything was black and white. So everything from that point on in the different scenes was black and white. So as we continued to walk, as I crossed the street, I saw that, and then there was an intersection in the middle of the road, and I just saw this van flying by, and it stopped. Well, there was a few vans, sorry, there was a few vans driving by, filled with women, filled with people. For some reason, it was mainly women, but when one of them flew by, it stopped in the middle of the intersection. And the lady came out. I walked up to her and I was like, she said something and I didn't understand what she was saying. And I was like, huh? And then she said it again. She repeated herself and she said, like, if you work in the office, like in a medical office, you are needed. You're being summoned, to help us. Because it was like, because of this disaster, they had needed everyone who worked in the medical field to go and assist them. So they were packing these vans up with nurses and receptionists and different people in the medical field, and they filled the van up with different people along the streets and wherever, and then they drove off. And then that scene changed to another scene where I found myself in this car, and it was filled with people, and I looked over to a guy. I was sitting in the back seat, and I looked over to a guy which he goes to my church, and I think this is a confirmation to him. God has given him. I'm not sure if he spoke or if he prayed about it, or maybe we have questions in our heart, and God sends out confirmations to us. So I know that this is a confirmation to him. So I'll share this with him. But I remember looking him straight in the eye, and I said, "It's about to begin. Everything that I have been sharing in my videos is about to begin taking place." And then the thought came to my mind, like, finally people are going to believe, or finally people are going to see that all I was saying was true. People are finally going to believe, right? So this thought came to my mind, and I said this to him, right? So I looked him straight in the face and I told him that. And then this car took us. We stopped outside of like these massive, beautiful apartments. They had just been built, and I knew it was like an apartment block or a housing scheme area where it was for very wealthy people. It was like everything was beautiful inside. I just knew it. It was like annoyed inside that everything was so expensive. It was so valuable, and it was like luxury, right? There was these two women outside, and when the car pulled up, I remember saying to them, they looked at me surprised, like, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I want to look at one of these places to rent. I want to move here. And they look at me and they were like, I think to them they were so surprised, like, what, you can't afford this place? You can't afford to be here? And inside my heart, I knew, I was like, yes, like I can afford it, I have the money to stay here. And they were just so confused, and she kept saying like, no, in order to rent or want to buy one of these properties, you have to have a certain amount of money. So she was trying to say like I didn't have the money to rent this place, and I kept telling her about this. So anyways, that was it. That was a dream. That I woke up, and the interpretation that I got from it is that something big is coming. A massive natural disaster is going to happen. And ministries, because when I saw the van pull over, well, first of all, before I get to the van, when I saw the veil being torn, it was like our veil being pulled back. It was like a confirmation to what God was showing me before, where everything, the veil is being made so thin, so everything is is so close between the spiritual and the physical, at this moment. And also, what more importantly, what I gathered from that is that when I saw the veil, is that everything, there's going to be a revelation of the truth. The truth is going to be laid open, made bare before us. We kind of living inside of this fantasy in a form. Like the world has all of us so consumed, and we living in an illusion. And the truth is Christ, and the truth is God. Everything in our life is meant to draw us closer to God. However, we find ourselves being a part of the world, and being lied to the illusions and everything. So it was like a revelation that everything will be made bare, black and white, before us when these things happen, right? And we'll come to know the truth. And when I saw the vans go by, it made me, realize that vans could represent ministries. Ministries or cars represent like personal people, I guess, transportation and like that. But a van could be a representation of a ministry. And who did we see inside of these vans? It was medical assistants, so they provide healing. So healing will come from this, right? Or helping or healing, or it could mean like I was saying, healing ministries could come out of it, or even revival can come out of it, or just general a ministry is going to come out of it, right? And then what was so amazing to me was that when I was in the car, I looked at this guy. And like I said, I think this part is a confirmation to him as well as a confirmation to all of us, because we are so curious to know what time it is spiritually and is the Lord, because He's showing us so much in rapture and tribulation that we don't really know where we stand with all of this. Where is the time? Because everything is in God's hand and His time, So that was just like a revelation of where we are spiritually. And I said, it is about to begin. Everything that I have been sharing in my videos is about to begin to take place. And I looked at him straight and I spoke this to him. But the way that I looked at him and I said it in such straightness and a surety and conviction, I knew that it was like God was speaking to him, to this person, right, as well as to us. And this is what he's saying, right? And then the thought then came to my mind, like, finally people are going to see that all I was saying was true. People are finally going to believe, And that was like the most incredible thing. That I just knew it. I knew like everything that I have been sharing. I even know now, like all that I share, it doesn't really make sense to people. People don't understand what I'm doing, Like, I think when many people, and even a lot of people around that are around me, when they see me share these things, they're like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Because when we look and we see the world the way it is now, it's hard for us to really believe that these things will happen, right? But I was like, finally, people will see, people will understand, and, really know the true purpose and meaning of all that I was sharing. It is to help those when these things come and they don't know what to do and what to expect or where to go, and then the lies from the devil will start to build. So at that time, it's going to lead many people to Christ, right? So I'm doing work for the future. And, in saying that, as well as the other two scenes, the first two scenes, which I said I wouldn't share because they involve, personal people around me in my life, and God was just showing me that these people who are around you, and in your life, they don't understand what you're doing. They don't understand your walk with me. So I think He just wants me to give a little revelation into this, so that people, to try not to leave people in the dark, but just explain what I'm going through, because, even in my well, in my walk with God, God pulls us away from situations, from people. I said this before, and even sometimes in the church. And it's not that you don't want to be there, it's God specifically does this so that He can work on you, you know, and people won't understand that. Looking at it, it may seem that you are walking away from people, or you are walking away from different situations, but it's not that. It's just that God has to work on us before He can place us in a certain situation to do that purpose to the best that He wants us to walk in, So I made a comment before, and I will always stand by this. And it's nothing to do with my outlook on the church. It has nothing to do with what anyone in the church has ever done to me or anything, but it's more of the more I walk with God and the more I see through my own walk and my own personal experience with Him, is that there's so much that's available to us that we don't even know. We are completely blind to. And I made this comment before that the church has become a show, right? I made that comment before, and I think a lot of people look at it and think like, I have something against the church, or maybe, like I said, the church has done something to me. It's nothing to do like that. It's nothing. It's the complete opposite. It's just that because due to coming to revelation, by my own walk in God, we don't even use half of the provisions that God has made available. Like I was saying, there's so much He has provided when we walk day to day with Him, And the best way to explain this is using the scripture where Paul spoke of this, right? 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8 to 10. And Paul said it was concerning the thorn in his flesh. And he said, concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities than that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Right? And I think this is the whole essence of walking with God day to day. The only way for us to truly receive all of His provisions, all that He has offered to us each day, is when we are truly weak, and when we are not so much, it's not that He wants us to be weak, but when we address the weaknesses in our life and we embrace these weaknesses, and these not even weaknesses but flaws, right? So God works through us in our areas of weaknesses, our flaws, and sin that does not align with who Christ is, right? So to walk with us daily through it. So whatever area in our life that may not be aligned to who Jesus Christ is, the man of Jesus Christ, God wants to work with us through this area, right? And the daily trying to work through this is the walking with God. This is what it means to walk with God, right? So He provides a provision wherever we may be flawed. For Him, a provision of encounter with Him through it, and an opportunity to see His glory through the process of it. So each day we can see the glory of God, we can encounter God, and it can be done through walking through our flaws and trying to perfect and refine ourselves to change in that area in our life to who Jesus Christ is. If everything was perfect in our life, there wouldn't be any need for us to really draw close to God or any desire to reach out to Him. And when we look at most churches, or when we look at the body of Christ on the whole, now The only thing that they really focus on is that we can get out of the most we can get out of God is prosperity, that we are only here to use God for our gain, to better and prosper ourselves, you know, in living comfortable. And these are the things are gifts of the Spirit. And it's not, there's so much more available to Him, and the best and the most that we can get out of Him are usually in the most difficult situations in our life. The difficult areas, our weaknesses, our flaws, our areas of sin, our weaknesses to sin each day. This is where we get the most out of God, absolute most, and it is found in our daily encounter with Him. So as He walked holding our hand, each day making us new. So God is so much more than we can imagine. We don't even have an understanding, a grasp of who God is, because we only look down one avenue, and this is, okay, what can God help me with or do for me that I'm going to be prosperous and I can be the best person, and I can have a nice way to live and comfortable way to live and this sort of thing, and I'm going to have all the gifts of healing, of prophecy, and all of these things. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The real juice out of it we get by trying to refine ourselves. So when we look at the Bible, I always said this, and I say it, I said it before, in certain messages on Facebook and with people, I share with people. And I said, when we look at the Bible now, we are not supposed to follow any of the prophets in the Bible. The Old Testament is a thing of the past, in the sense that, yes, it is there for teaching us. However, we first have to look at Jesus Christ, the man Jesus Christ, and then He teaches us revelation into different things based on what He did, and then we can connect it. We use the Old Testament as a reference point of teaching, so it's there to help us to see Jesus more clearly, so whenever I have a problem day to day, I ask the Lord, like, help me with this, and He'll first point me towards what He did. So He points me towards Himself, and He said, look at this. So He'll point us towards the Gospels. I shared with someone before, the most powerful book in the Bible is the book of John. Many people don't even realize this. The book of John is the most powerful book in the Bible. Why is that? It is because the very foundation and universal laws, the laws that govern our universe, can only come from the mouth of Jesus. It can't come from what David did. It can't come from what Elijah did, Moses did, no one did. But it comes straight from the lips of Jesus. The very laws of gravity that govern our earth, the laws of the universe which govern the whole universe, which are more powerful than the laws of gravity, are found in the book of John, right? And this is the most amazing thing. So whenever I have a flaw, right? So for example, God is teaching me about truth right now. Week to week, he takes me through, or from process to process. I shouldn't say week to week, but process to process. He's taken me through different situations, or different laws in which, universal laws in which He wants me to understand. I want you to get this, son. Right? So He's showing me this. So He said, okay, look at what I first did. Right? So He spoke, and there's so much scriptures which He speak on truth. He spoke on walking in the light and coming out of darkness. How many scriptures do we find in the book of John where Jesus Christ speaks about walking in the light and not in darkness? Those who walk in darkness stumble because they do not know where they are going. Right? And there's so much we can go into. And walking in the light means to walk in the truth. When we get to the core of it. There's so much. So He will take us, He will show us what He did and what He means, and then if needed, He'll take you to the Old Testament and show you, like, for example, like when Adam and Eve first sinned, what did they do? They naturally hid. So their first reaction was to hide from God, and to go into hiding. And when they went into hiding, this is a form of walking in darkness. Because when God called out to them, he was like, Adam, where are you? Of course, God knew where he was, but it was a question for Adam to ask himself, where is his standing between him and God? Why is he hiding from God? And not only God, we do these same things with people. So when we sin, there is a hiding that takes place. This is why there is such fear when it comes to public speaking. This is why we have fear in general. This is why we suffer from shame. This is why everything negative that has to do with guilt, shame, and fear, it is because there is a hiding from the light, from the truth, right? So God, Jesus showed me this, what he was speaking of, what he was speaking. And then he also mentioned, he said, those who follow in my commands, right? Those who follow my commands will live by the truth, will come to know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So we see that walking in the light is the truth, and only the truth can set us free. So he's teaching me from himself what he did and what he said. And these laws can never be broken. They're universal laws that whenever God speaks it, it can never be changed. It can never be changed. And this is why we feel fear, shame, and guilt, is because when we hide, we feel this way. So in a sense, it is like the Bible testifies of itself because of our behavior patterns, the way that we live, our very actions testify that the Bible is true, because what Jesus said would happen if we do this, it actually happens, and it actually is our driving force of our behavior patterns that we see in the world today. So this is, so this is why I believe that the word is true. And also, more importantly, this is what God wants to teach us day to day. So Christ first has to point to himself. He shows us himself, and then from that point forward, then he will want you to walk in the same things that he walked in, right? Sorry, I made some notes, but I don't even know where to kind of pick up on. All right, so again, like I was saying with the truth, now sharing a little truth in myself, when he begins to work in us, he shows us what is inside of us. And I was speaking with my sister this week, I have a sister in the church, and throughout my process, I've been kind of, sharing things with her. And she has seen my walk, and she has seen my transformation and my whole process, I guess, from my darkest eras. And I was sharing with her, and I was telling her, this week, or in this period now, God is working in me, because she was like, "You're still in process?" And I was like, "Yeah." And there's things that God has to get out of us before we can go to do our calling, because if we don't get these things out, we're going to make a mockery of him and bring his name to shame. And truth is a very important one. If we have all the revelation, all the wisdom, all the things that he's teaching us, but yet we don't know how to practice truth, then it's like that's a mockery of God. So he first has to work with us to correct all of these most important statutes, these most important foundational things which we should have in our life, right? So I was telling her, like, I have to be open with you. I'm a very pretentious person. God was showing me this, that at times, and we may all be guilty of it, but I go to the extreme sometimes, and it has been, a difficult thing in my life, because before, you don't know why we do the things that we do, but we do them. And when God shines light on that area and shows us, this is why you're doing it, and this is what you are doing, and this is how you correct it. And he was showing me that I'm pretty pretentious at times, in the sense that my greatest fear in this life is to cause people pain, right? I don't want to be, because of my actions, things I may say, or things that I may have done to someone, would cause pain in that person, or cause them to say like, look at that, look what Anthony done to me, like I wasn't expecting that. That really hurt me. That's my greatest fear, right? So because of that, I place people on a pedestal sometimes, and I put them above myself, where I'll try to please everyone, and by trying to please everyone, you always may avoid the truth, and you can come across as fake. So if everyone, say for example, someone makes a joke, although I may not laugh with it, but if that person laughs, you will kind of laugh and agree, and that's not truth. And when you have these kind of foundational things set in you and it becomes a habit, there's a pretensiveness that comes out of us. And that in itself, which is the painful part, is although we don't want to hurt people because we're not being truthful to them, we end up hurting them because we're not being true, and we're lying to them, right? So God was showing me all of these things, and He was saying, truth. We have to live truthful, and be honest with people, be open. And He was showing me what to replace it with, and the scriptures how to do it, what He did, and this is what I mean. So each day there's so much. Imagine walking through the day, and all God wants to do is turn you from Himself, turn you from yourself into Himself. And He's teaching you all of the things that He did when He walked the earth. And then He's showing you how to replace them with different things, right? So this is a walk. And unfortunately, these changes bring pain out of us, because it's painful trying to change a foundational habit that we've been so accustomed to. And when you come up against that fight, and the devil is trying to keep these foundational habits in place, but you're working with God to break them, there's going to be an inner friction and an inner war that takes place. So because of this, sometimes God has to pull us away from other distractions, other people, and more importantly, even our calling, the thing that we're called to do. If we're not ready to do that yet, and He's working on us, especially in this time when there's an inner war going on, you can't be in that area at that time. You have to focus on God. You need to learn to hear His voice. You need to learn to walk with Him, and just learn to fellowship. And through that, we learn to hear His voice, and we learn to walk with Him. I know the voice of God. I can tell you what God is teaching me this week and that week. I can tell you what He is telling me here. I can tell you that. Like, I know the voice of God, and no one can tell me wrong, right? So this was something that He has been working with me on, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't understand, who are around me, who are near to me. And I just wanted to share a little bit of that before we can first come to what we are truly called to do, God has to work with us to get this thing right. Because if we go into our calling and we are not doing or living by what He wants us to do and live by, and being obedient to His voice, we know His voice, we can, follow what He's telling us to do. If we can't do these foundational things and be truthful and honest and love, then we are lying. We are lying, and not only lying, we are bringing shame to His name. And God is truth. So He doesn't want us to lie. He doesn't want us to bring shame to His name. And He wants us to represent Him as He would, So as Paul said in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 2, although I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I could move mountains, but not love, I am nothing. So God first has to teach us love, and He first has to teach us truth. He first has to teach us faith, and obedience, and to know His voice, Because if I have all of these things and I don't have that, like God is teaching me, He's by walking through all of these processes and all of these difficulties and seeing His glory day to day, by putting these things to practice and slowly overcoming them, and then seeing the provisions that are available daily, There's sermons that He's building in me, and there's things that He's teaching me. But if I can't even walk in truth, I will only make a mockery of God. So that was just something, I think He was showing me that a lot of people misunderstand me. And just to kind of clarify that. But, oh, I forgot to mention in regarding to the dream, just a confirmation. Again, this is a great example of provisions that God has for us daily. I've been praying when God first gave me this dream, which was on Monday morning, and I pray on it. Obviously, I don't share anything right away, to receive confirmation. And this is an example of how amazing God is, how amazing, like we can't even put God, we can't even understand God, his power and his greatness and how he works. So I've been praying on it and I said, Lord, please just let me know. I know this is from you, but I need confirmation and I need understanding into it. And one of the confirmations he gave me a few, but I'll just share this one. So that day I went to lunch. I went to go buy lunch, right? I went into town. Like I said, I work on the sea, so I took the dinghy, I went into town, got some food, and I left from there. Normally I just go back to the boat and eat. But when I went back to the boat, something told me, oh, there was the Spirit. The Spirit told me, go to the supermarket now and buy some things. I needed some things for my house. So I went across and again in the dinghy to the supermarket. Right as I was crossing the road, there was a car with another co-worker. I was on the pedestrian and his car was right next. It pulled up right on the pedestrian and he allowed me to cross. He was going back to work. He forgot to get lunch. So he said to me, he said, okay, when you go inside, can you pick up something for me? So he shouted this to me as I was crossing the road. So I said, all right. So I went inside. I went to the bakery to the back. And normally inside of the supermarket in this bakery, it's always the news on. Always, always, always. But this day when I went there to go get the food for this guy, because that was the only reason that would draw me to the bakery in the back. Otherwise, I would have just gotten, I think I had to get like soap and something like that. So otherwise, I would have just gotten the soap and left. But because he stopped on the pedestrian, let me cross, told me to go there and get that, I went to the bakery. And like I said, normally there's the news on, but this day there was a movie playing. And right there, while I was waiting for the attendant to get the food, within like a minute or 2 minutes, I was watching this movie and a tsunami came over all of these buildings. I don't even know the movie. I asked the guy and I was like, what movie is this? And he was like, I don't know. But I had just prayed on confirmation to my tsunami dream. And God at the right time told me to go from work, to go in the supermarket, go then. Like everything happened in perfect time. Where that car with that co-worker stopped me, told me to get him something. I walked to that place, which they normally just play the news. Always it's just news. But this day they had a movie where it was a tsunami. And within 2 minutes, I will watch the whole tsunami take out all of the buildings. And it was just like I saw it with like New York and all of these buildings and everything. And I said, how amazing is that? I just stood up in awe and I just, like, this is the glory that we can see the provisions, day-to-day provisions. And most of my days, it consists of things like this. I get to know God's voice so clearly. I get to know what He's saying. I can tell you what God has been showing me over the past months, and I know His voice clearly on a day-to-day basis. So these are the provisions that are there for us daily. So when I say that I think the church in general has become a show, it's because I just mean that I see that there is so much available to us. And just going to church on a Sunday or, midweek Bible study or whatever the case may be and going home, this is more than that. It's more than prosperity. Teaching is more than what we can get from God. In that sense of living comfortably. And it's more than spiritual gifts. Because as Paul said, even if we have all of these gifts and we're missing the basics, the foundation, which we have to get. We're nothing. So I just pray that this whole message encourages everyone who sees it. And if there's anyone who misunderstands my walk with God, I hope this kind of gives you just a little insight into what I'm going through and my walk. And I've come to the realization that no matter what happens in my life, I will never turn from God. I'll say that boldly because before, we always doubt, we always say, like, God, I hope I don't turn away from you. I don't want to go to hell. But I know that I won't turn away because through the trials in my life, when we can look at our trials and find God and triumph in God, in the fire, in the weaknesses, in whatever the devil throws at us, there's nothing he can do to stop us because we find joy in God in the worst of situations. When we find God in the fire and we learn to sit with him and enjoy his presence and learn to hear his voice and these things through our most difficult moments, there's nothing that the devil can do to stop you. It may take time, because process takes time for us to go from darkness to light and to turn from the image of, the life of the devil to the life of Jesus, to turn into his image. So it'll take time. But through that process, you will learn to see the glory of God. You'll learn to hear the voice of God. And there's nothing that the enemy or the force of darkness or the kingdom of darkness can do to stop you. So I just hope everyone has a blessed day, and that this message finds a place in your heart. Thank you for listening.